when I look at your such an illustrious career, where you have served in different parts of the world on behalf of Sri Lanka, what made you get into this public sector? Please go ahead.
I was at customs, and for some incident, I was disappointed. So I go and told my boss, look here, within 3 months, I am going from there. I am leaving. I'm not going to stay here because I have no career path. And then I applied to many jobs. So then this came first. So I took it because it's a good job. I'm still an academic. I'm still studying. So that is why I wanted a career path. If I wanted money, I would have stayed in customs. So I took it. I'm still enjoying. I'm still reading.
Good afternoon and a warm welcome to another session in the MBA Diaries, where we talk about many topics, many expertise, and share experiences for students as well as for everyone's expansion of knowledge as well. So as Asia Pacific Institute of Information Technology, known as APIT Sri Lanka, we are honored to be hosting this webinar today as well. And of course, let me now invite and welcome all the students to join in this platform and the ones who are connecting to us on the learning management platform. We will be going into another interesting discussion. So welcome all of you who are in the platform. Along with the students, a warm welcome to all our distinguished guests who are in the platform, along with the foreign delegates and diplomats, as well as the corporate officials as well. And with that, let me warmly welcome the networking personality, the leadership of this particular MBA Diaries program, Dr. Rohan Thatukorala, who is one of the directors for APIT Sri Lanka, as well as giving the leadership to postgraduate school as well as the computing school undergraduate departments as well, to introduce the speaker and to go ahead into the session. Dr. Rohantha, over to you.
Thank you very much, Kaushali, and it's actually an honor for me to introduce today's speaker. He's one of the most eminent personalities in trade and commerce, a very, very respected person. I personally worked with him when I was chairman of the Export Development Board. One of the most, I would say, the pivot in terms of building trade in Sri Lanka. Currently serving as the president of the Sri Lanka Belgium Association. During his 46-year career, he has served the country in the areas of trade and commerce at the Sri Lankan Embassy in Pakistan, Sri Lankan Embassy in Japan, Sri Lankan Embassy in Germany, Sri Lankan Embassy in Belgium, Consul General of Sri Lanka in Dubai, and Consul General of Sri Lanka in Sydney, Australia. During his tenure, only in Germany, Mr. Fernando has organized more than 40 international trade and fair across EU that helped Sri Lanka build export industry under the EU GSP Plus trade facility with Sri Lanka. He has also represented the country at top global trade forums, symposiums, high-powered business networks, trade conferences, and been a member of the key trade delegations in the capacity as the negotiator and policymaker in the building of the export industry of Sri Lanka. In 2012, he was appointed as the pivotal position as the Director General of Commerce in the Department of Commerce in the government of Sri Lanka. Thereafter, he went on to establish the National Institute of Exports, NIOE, for the National Chamber of Exporters. Today, he is one of the most eminent trade consultants in Sri Lanka for foreign trade and is the president of the Sri Lanka Belgian Association. Ladies and gentlemen, the former Director General of Ministry of Trade and Commerce of Government of Sri Lanka, PD Fernando. PD, over to you. Over to you, PD.
Thank you, Rohantha. Thank you for inviting me. And more than that, thank you for opening this subject, which is very, very important for Sri Lanka. And my personal feeling is we are not giving importance on this as it should be. So driving free trade in Sri Lanka. So this is a pet subject for me and talking about FTAs in 25 minutes is a task. I don't know how to do it, but I will do my best. Secondly, I'm not very conversant with Zoom meetings. There also I will do my best. We'll see how it will work. Right. I hope the viewers can see the presentation I have distributed just now. This I have done some time back, but the material is not outdated. They are still valid because theories are theories. I will take the first one. It's okay. Right, okay. The most abused, least noted. Now, this is what one of the former director generals of the WTO says. Why he says so? Because the purpose of the WTO is to get free trade and to give equal treatment to all the nations, MFN. But this is not MFN. When you are giving concessions to a group of countries or a country, then it is not MFN. But there is a provision in the GATT agreement that could enable. Why they say did so was that EU arrangement has started before GATT agreement started. So they gave a provision, but this provision has gone a long way, and that is why they say it is most abused, because it is an opening to get the countries to give concessions to a group of countries, finally targeting a fully liberalized trade, which has not happened. Only the EU has succeeded in doing this. None of the other countries, now decades they are negotiating, still they are using this instrument, but not exactly targeted on MFN, most favored nation. And then the other thing is the legality. All agreements are under WTO, but they only discussed and no further action. So it says that there is no consensus rule in the WTO with regard to making free trade agreements for WTO members. The only requirement is that they when using Article 24, have to be notified to the WTO members. I don't take much time on this, but you have the presentation. You may read it and see what it says. So today, I think more than that, I would like to explain few things how negotiating free trade agreements should be done. So one of our colleagues, the commercial officers, an intellectual, has done a book on negotiating free trade agreements. This is used widely as a textbook to teach negotiating FTAs. And Australia being a very prominent country promoting FTAs. So I would recommend the students to read this book. It's very useful. It explains everything in more or less a layman's language. It's not that technical. You can understand. It has been used in many workshops by the AusAid as well as other teachers on FTAs. Now, let's see the process. one of the main tasks at the start of the process is to test the usefulness of free trade agreements with a particular country or countries. So this is one thing that a country should do first and foremost before going for negotiating. Any trade negotiation, any FTA must give some results to our country in case our case, but the other country also think in the same way. So it is not one country is gaining, one country is not losing, then you won't get an agreement. So both we must find a comfortable area where both countries are gaining. Then, and before doing that, that is the need of test usefulness has to be assessed. Assess whether it will promote regional economic integration and it likely impact on the industry and business, consumers and regulators. Now, after an agreement, there should be beneficiaries. The business should benefit, the consumer should benefit, and the industry should benefit. So we must do this assessment before going into negotiation. Then there should be scoping in the studies, all initial consultation, stakeholders, business and industry bodies, and call for public submission. So this will enable the negotiators to get the interest of all the categories. It's not one, it's not only the government officers, it's not only the business, it's not only the industries, it's not only the consumers. All the parties must elaborate their concerns on the results of FTA. Then there will be public submissions and input from businessmen are critical in identifying as assessing the existing barriers to trade and investment flows, and for forming negotiators what additional outcome we should be seeking. Now, this is another aspect. The duty is not the only factor that is affecting trade. There are other concerns. We have to study them as well. So today you can see in most of the countries are practicing more non-tariff barriers than the tariff barriers. Tariff is not that serious these days. It has been lowered in many countries, but the bigger problems are surfaced when it comes to other barriers again. Then after the Prime Minister or Trade Minister launches, now launching of the trade negotiation take place, they will make a public announcement and call for public support. Now again and again, repeating the same exercise because this is something very serious. This is the whole country is affecting, all the sectors are affecting. Therefore, it should be done very, very carefully and with lot of consultations. So during the negotiations, consult with stakeholders to ensure that their views continue to inform the development of our negotiating strategy. So it should be kept informed, the concerned parties, especially the stakeholders. Then again, input from business is an essential part of this. Inputs from business. Once the agreement is signed, the Trade Minister tables the agreement in Parliament and Parliamentary Committee. The Joint Standing Committee on Treaties considers the agreement and it will call for public submission. Now see this, how much it is being screened. And then after that, the Trade Minister will have to put it to the Parliament and the parliamentary committees to further check how the citizens will be benefiting from this. So there are repeated opportunities for the stakeholders to make their concerns known to the negotiators. Now, these are the words this I have taken from a presentation by Dr. Bradley Armstrong, who is the author of this Negotiating Free Trade Agreements, a guide. So these are not my words. This is not my presentation. Therefore, it's fair enough. I must mention the name of the person who did the job. And he is also a very known person who is conducting this type of seminars, webinars, and also teaching on free trade agreements. Now, in the book, the process is shown as follows: how a free trade agreement process should be conducted. So, first thing is the feasibility assessment, and then go for consultations, back decision to launch negotiation, go for consultations, back substantive negotiations, then consultations, then conclusion of negotiation and legal verification, again back to consultations, then the ministerial signing, parliamentary security and implementation, and then still it has to go to consultation, because this is a very complex document. It affects every segment of the economy. Therefore, this process is essential. Now, I would, I think the students may again read this after the webinar. I'm not going to read everything. Now, this is the Australia's treaty approval process. Now, see, preparation of a national interest analysis, which set out the advantages and disadvantages to Australia. When we are doing a trade agreement, we must well in advance must assess, study, and record what will be the repercussions, what will be the gains that we are making, what will be the losses we are making. Sometimes we will have to sacrifice some of our industries. No matter, it's okay. And we must get something worth of that much. Otherwise, we will be losing even the existing industries. So this should not happen. This is why all these tools are set to free trade negotiations. And every time they must, the negotiating team must consider the details what consultations came from. The negotiators are negotiating on behalf of a country, on behalf of all the segments of the population. So it is their duty to listen to all the people and convince them that this will benefit the country in total. Maybe we will be losing some industries, maybe we will be gaining some industries, but this has to be focused, it has to be measured. Preparation of a regulatory impact statement, which includes an assessment of the impact of the proposed regulation. Now, after a free trade agreement, we will have to bring regulations, and we should make a study in advance what will be the result of these new regulations. Then tabling the treaty before Parliament. Definitely it should go to Parliament, and then ample time is to be allocated to discuss this. I think in some countries it is mandatory and it is mentioned that in the ratification procedure, the agreement should be at least minimum 21 days must be given in the Parliament to debate the agreement and their benefits. Then preparation and passage of the enabling legislation. The timing of this depends on the complexity of the proposed legislation, the timetable of parliamentary sitting, and the demands of other businesses before Parliament. Now, if we are going for a CEPA agreement, it is very, very complicated. Even the services are coming into the field. So there should be adequate time to get into the details of all these areas. Then I have given an extract of the Canada proceeding. So there they say explanatory memorandum. There's a thing called explanatory memorandum that is going to the parliament. The clerk of the House of Commons distributes to all MPs the full text of the treaty along with an explanatory memorandum. We can't expect the parliamentarian to read all the things. So there should be a guide for them to read it, and that is the explanatory memorandum about the treaty. It is prepared by the negotiating team with inputs from the minister responsible for the treaty. The explanatory memorandum covers the following points: subject matter, a description of the treaty, main obligations, a description of the main obligations that will be imposed upon Canada by the treaty. But this is in case of the Canada. I'm just giving an example because we have not put down anywhere in Sri Lanka. I have seen these procedures. National interest summary, a description of the reasons why Canada should become a party. So similarly, we also should prepare a memorandum why this agreement is good for Sri Lanka, why we should be a party to this agreement. Then we'll see ministerial responsibility, a listing of ministers whose spheres of responsibility are implicated by the contents of the treaty. Now, this is another area that we should be very, very careful, because in Sri Lanka, we have a large number of ministries. Their activities are affecting the other ministries. So naturally, FTA will impact many ministries. So all these ministries has to be come to the scene. Then the policy considerations and analysis as how the obligations contained in the treaty, as well as how the treaty's implementation by the government departments are or will be consistent with the government policies. Now, this is very important. Now, see. Now, we already have government policies. So how this, after this agreement, how the government policies will be impacted from the listing? Because after signing a free trade agreement, we can't bring new laws affecting the free trade zone unilaterally. We will have to negotiate everything. So before going for the negotiation, we must have the necessary rules impact in the country. So I will see there is some lapses in this as well. So we should have enough rules to manage, and there should be a policy to govern. And without both these the tools, going for an FTA will be a risk. Federal provisional territorial implications, a determination of whether the obligations in the treaty relate in whole or in part to matter under provincial constitutional jurisdictions. So this is another aspect. If you are signing a country with agreement with another country, which has a federal states and the other states, and all the states has to come to the line and then have the understanding. For example, if you are exporting a product under FTA to a country in one port, if you are taking the goods to another state, if there is a taxes at the borders, then this is not the intention of the negotiators. This is not the intention of the exporters expect. So these things we will have to look well in advance, not after signing the agreement. Then the implementation, a brief description of how the treaty will be implemented in Canadian law. Now, this is the other thing, the local laws. So we have to consider that, including a description of the legislative covers. So as I told earlier, there are many local laws that can prevent a shipment though the duty-free concession is given. We have many examples in the past. Under the agreement, we can we can export the product duty-free. Yes, agreed. They are abide by the agreement. They allow to land the goods, but you can't clear it because there are many local rules that can block it still. Then the associated instruments, information and any international instrument of any kind that are related to this treaty. Now, there is a trick in the FTA's negotiations. There may be some clauses you will not see in the agreement, so you will be happy, but they are automatically under international law. So instead of for example, if you take an investment agreement, we are signing with a foreign country, or foreign the investor. It will not say we are coming under ISDS mechanism, but it is automatically coming. So we got to be very careful when it is read with the other international laws. So free trade agreement is coming under WTO law. Then investment is coming under ISDS mechanisms. So the impact of those has to be analyzed before we go into signing an agreement. Even after signing, before ratification, these things has to be clear. Because once ratification is done, then you can't bring any new laws. If you bring any new laws, they will take us to international courts, and the investor will ask compensation from the government. Consultation. The description of the consultations undertaken with the House of Commons, self-governing Aboriginal. This is with regard to Canadian law. So I'm just explaining the Canadian the procedure just to compare with Sri Lanka. I don't see we have done a proper procedural approach to FTAs, but it has to be done. The House of Commons has 21 here. This is the Canadian. The House of Commons has then 21 sitting days to consider the treaty before execute may take necessary steps to ratify the treaty. This is ratification procedure. I have not seen a proper ratification procedure in Sri Lanka. This is a big problem, because the one who get a mandate to sign an agreement, he can sign anything. Then after that, the ratification, without a ratification procedure, it will simply go to Parliament and it will not be debated. Perhaps it may not go even to the Parliament. So this has to be cleared and the path has to be declared. So otherwise, we will have serious problems afterwards. So this is the practice of other countries. Even the ratification procedure is a common thing that should be, but I don't see it is given adequate attention in Sri Lanka. So now again, I will take the example of how EU is doing it. So EU, again with the Canadian district. EU-Canada Trade Agreement Council adopts decisions to sign CETA. A decision on signature of the government, a decision on the provisional application of the government, and decision to request the consent of the European Parliament for the conclusion of the agreement. The representatives of the member states also adopted a joint interpretative instrument. This instrument, which is a joint text with Canada, will provide a binding interpretations of CETA terms in specific issues. And all these agreements, we will have a binding part. We must know what we are binding. We must know what we are getting as a result of this binding. Without this assessment, we are not sure whether we are gaining or not. But in our past experience with the 2 free trade agreements, we have first. Today, I think most of the exporters are unhappy about it. However, the way you can explain with statistical juggleries, but exporters simply are unhappy. So people have given up. They are not complaining, but doesn't mean that they are happy with the agreement. Then question and answers. Okay. What Sri Lanka should negotiate? I think the first thing Sri Lanka should negotiate is our trade deficit. I feel sorry to say that there was a group of even professionals some time back said like this. It was widely publicized in newspapers. We may import a lot from India, but we may not sell to India. We may sell to the United States of America. What matters is the net export value for the country. Only the net export value gets added to the GDP. People's wealth will grow based on net exports, not based on bilateral trade with a particular country. This is a myth. I think this is a very big mistake. If Sri Lanka, what we are negotiating with other countries, what we are getting, the main negotiating point that ours for Sri Lanka is the trade deficit. And the India is harping their trade deficit factor on other countries. And then the USA is harping the trade deficit. Even with Sri Lanka, USA, the first statement they say is that the trade deficit in your favor. So this is what all other countries are doing. I don't know how we can go without considering this trade deficit factor. When a country is having a market access in our country, we should ask our market access for our products as well. So how can they do that? There's no other way to do it. Only by a FTA, they can give some special concessions for us to get a better market entry. But this is not happening in Sri Lanka today. I think it is a mistake. Then the second thing we can negotiating point is the location of the country. We are a good harbor to the world navigation. Many ships are bypassing Sri Lanka without giving us much benefits. But when negotiating free trade agreements, I think we should go more weightage on this factor and try to impress the partners to use this and then give concessions to us against that. So we have two big bargaining points we should do in negotiations, especially if we are having an agreement with Sri Lanka. The other thing is that there is a regional bloc called RCEP. Instead of negotiating with the country, we should have considered the benefits we can get from the whole regional group as a result of an FTA entered with this, and how we can benefit from it. The studies, I'm not going to say just we should go in, we must study this, because what else we have to negotiate? So any country who is coming to sign an agreement with us, they also will ask, what are we going to get? So what are we offering? What are we getting? So there should be a balance between the two. So we can't lower the duties further, because Sri Lanka is already lowered their duties at the bindings at the very early stage in 1970s. So now it has further reduced. So little we can do on duties. So we must find some other bargaining points. So what are the bargaining points? This has to be discovered. This has to be studied. And And one more thing, there are things called safeguard clauses. These safeguard clauses are very important in signing free trade agreements. I will read one of the safeguard clauses. Sorry, I have not put this in the presentation, but I will give the institution to put it with the presentation. I will read it. Water. CETA does not oblige Canada or the European Union and its member states to permit the commercial use of water if they do not wish to do so. CETA fully preserve their ability to decide how to use and protect water resources. Furthermore, CETA will not prevent the reversal of a decision to allow the commercial use of the water. Now see, these safeguard clauses are very essential in an agreement. I think because the water is very important in the future, the water plus countries will have a big advantage. But if we sign an agreement today without this type of safeguard clauses, then you can add them later. So at the negotiating time, we must have our safeguard clauses. We must discuss the arrangement for not being a victim of signing an agreement, not knowing what it is. So, and the last page, I have given you a web page where you can learn what is happening in the world on FTAs. I regularly go to this and read the newest information about the free trade agreements. So that is called bilaterals org. Everything that is not happening at the WTO to do, I can't read it, too small. Anyway, with the presentation you have this. I strongly recommend you should follow this at least once or twice so that you will understand what is happening in the world. So, and free trade is not a magic. It will not give you magic results, and you can't just rush to a free trade. That is also not correct. I think we got to be very, very careful. And if you read this book, Negotiating Free Trade Agreements Guide, the link I have given, you will understand how important to go through a proper procedure for a free trade agreement. Otherwise, we will end up with losing many things, but our gains may also will not be materialized. Thank you.
Thank you very much, PD, and it was a fantastic view of this very important topic that currently which has been talked about. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't understand the importance of this whole area of the free trade agreement. So many questions coming in, sir. I will read out the questions as and when in a particular order. The first question that's coming on is, the president of Sri Lanka continuously says that the only way to bridge the current deficit is by driving free trade agreements. Current income is about 3 trillion, but our expenditure is about 5.2 trillion. That means that there's a gap of about 2.4 trillion. And most of that is right now funded by the taxes that have been levied. So the only way that we could give ease to the people is by driving free trade agreements. What is your view on this? Is the question coming from Asiri, who happens to be a product manager from Abans. who's also the MBA. She's an MBA student of Staffordshire University, PD. Over to you.
Thank you for the question. Very pertinent. But you may have listened to my presentation. It's not my presentation. I have taken up the materials from the international articles and books. It's not my personal opinion. And if you go through the bilaterals ORG, you will see yourself the mountain of problems that has arise in service implementing FTAs. Even India has withdrawn their participation at the regional grouping RCEP. They have given the explanation saying that India is not gaining from this. So far, I have not seen a country who has made such gains in a free trade agreement other than EU. EU, I told you at the beginning, they started before the GATT, and they have concluded the economic union so that everybody can travel freely, everybody can sell their goods freely. But even in that, the UK withdrawn. So these are issues related to FTAs. FTA is not a mantra to resolve all the problems. It will give some results, but not so rapid and not so fast and not so quantitative. It will have to be, we have to ask how this is happening with details.
Thank you, PD. There's a question coming from they picked the question. Isurinder. He happens to be actually working for a rubber company who does exports very much, who's also on the MBA program at Staffordshire University. And he's saying, whilst we say that the focus is on driving exports, why is it that the exports to India has been around $500 million for the last 5-10 years? What is your view, sir? Because you have been, I'm sure, in many consultations and discussions, symposiums on the FTA with India. What is your view on this?
I think if I understood correctly, my answer to the first question is included in this. If FTA can give so much of benefits, why India has not? I think most of the products that we are exporting to India are not that important to us, because the trade figures, still the trade balance is very big, and export products, if you analyze, you will see that the basic raw materials and this and that, and most of the manufactured products are not going, and most of the products which manage the Indian market were not successful, not because of duty, but due to the problems. I think most of the exporters are now not considering those things because of the difficulties they had to face. And within the FTA, I don't think we had a good the mechanism to resolve and put the exports back in the Indian market. Is it clear, Rohan?
Yes, yes, sir. And his second part of the question is saying is that if you are talking about non-tariff barriers, which is affecting the free trade between the two countries, shouldn't we first correct this and then move to a regional cooperation than trying to take on a bigger responsibility when we are not yet sorted the current issues? Your view, sir.
Thank you, Rohan. That is exactly because we must know what are the other barriers into the trade, or we must have a clause that our negotiations are based on this. If these things are changing, we have to sit and discuss again. But these are not happened in the free trade agreements, the practice. But there must be something, because this is exactly what happened to us in India. We expected after signing an FTA, we will have all the countries coming to Sri Lanka and produce products and to cater to the entire Indian subcontinent. But it didn't happen. In fact, I think our investment, the promotion organizations went around the world with booklets and seminars and promoted this FTA and asked the investors to come to Sri Lanka and invest and produce and export it to India duty free. But investors did not come because they know that duty is not the only factor. There are many other factors. There are many non-tariff. Even the tariff between borders of the federal states can stop the trade. If the shipment is going to one state and if the market is in the other state, so these goods cannot go and compete. This is exactly our experience. I don't think still we have addressed them.
Interesting. Ajay, he actually is working in the UAE, PD. He's also studying for the Staffordshire University MBA. He's saying, why is it that for 10 years this has not been addressed? Is it a problem with exporters? Is it a problem with our policymakers? Is it to do with the political hierarchy? He's asking a very specific question.
Very good question. I must thank him, right? To his surprise, maybe even the exporters. Exporters are reluctant to bring the problems. They complain about their problems at the weddings, at danes, at funerals, but they are not coming to the Department of Commerce with their problems. That is one big problem that I face at the Department of Commerce when I was heading the department. Sometimes I pleaded them, please come, why don't you report? I will address it, I will ask. But they never said. They say, okay, Mr. Fernando, we can't take the struggle to do so much agonies. We will go to another market and have a small margin that is enough for us. And even with the negotiating team also, I think India was too slow in addressing our issues. We have taken up some issues, but they were very slow in addressing them. Not only India, but other kind of Pakistan as well. We have 2 agreements. In both agreements, we did not get what the exporters wanted.
So, PD, what is the issue then? Because see, end of the day, we know that we need export revenue coming into this country. But actually, if the attitude is not there for us to really go after and find, drive this export industry, what's the point in talking about so many new FTAs when the current FTAs are not actually harnessing? Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, there are 7 million pieces of apparel. There are about 15,000 kilograms of tea in the FTA with India, and the current utilization happens to be about 2.73%. What is your view, sir?
Exactly, Rohan. This is the ground situation. We have failed. And the one reason is everybody is talking free trade, but I think almost all the countries are not prepared to practice free trade. They will talk it, they will voice it, but when it comes to the customs, they will try their best to stop it and give the chance to a local producer. Sri Lanka, it is not happening that much, but in all the other countries are happening. I think when Singapore is coming up with the export-led economic growth, there were very few countries, or maybe the 1 or 2 countries in the world who are trying that export-led economic growth. So at the early stage, no other competitors, they managed, they came to the success. And after that, then the ASEAN came. They also wanted to go for export-led economic growth. And then all the countries want to go for export-led economic growth. Then who will be importing? It is only we, Sri Lanka, says that trade deficit is not important. This is very strange to me as well. I think we need more studies and better negotiators.
So you feel the problem is a negotiate the issue, or is it that we are not following through to understand why our exports are not really working? Because I remember once export of a tea sent goods to Mumbai, and then the non-tariff barriers like asking for certifications from different labs, it went on to the system that ultimately they said, let me just burn this tea and pay demurrage. I mean, so what is the way forward, PD?
That is why I said, this is very pathetic. Now, from one, I'm not blaming only the negotiators, but one is the negotiators should do proper studies before signing agreements. What are they going to do with the barriers other than duties? Maybe we have not done that. I could not find it. And the second thing, the political relations. I think politicians also of the two countries should sit and discuss these things and must get the solution for this. And they should make the Indian politicians understand, look here, sir, if this tea is not going in, we will be having problems. And it is an agreement for both countries. Our expectations were this at the negotiations. Now this is happening. Please do something on it and then allow our tea to go into the market. But this also has been maybe weak. Even the implementation, the Commerce Department side also, though I was the Director General for some time, I think there were lapses. We were not harping, and also on top of Commerce Department, there were other parties who are sitting on the negotiating table, sometimes even deciding. So what the Director General should decide, somebody else is deciding. So these are also the things that we have to correct before we going into other negotiations.
Okay. So PD, now there is a new agreement on the table, which is the FTA with Singapore. What is your view on that?
I think you can look at the Singapore agreement through the windows I have already given. Have we done all these exercises? Are we sure that it is okay? And the Singapore agreement, now I think it's a good thing. Now we have signed it. So somebody must seriously look at it and view it and get the national position on it. I told you that in case of Canada, they are discussing the free trade agreements. Of course, serious discussions, not blaming each other. 21 sitting days. This is a massive trade agreement covering services and many other areas. This will affect the entire the economic arena. So, and the studies, good point. But the other thing is, Rohan, how many WTO experts we have in the country? How many PhDs we have in the country on exports? Do we have the WTO center? Do we have a school to teach WTO? In India, there are number of the organizations doing only WTO studies. So how can we negotiate with them?
So
we are very primitive, I must say.
So are you saying that we are not ready for the Singapore Free Trade Agreement?
No, I don't say I'm not ready. But what I say is this has to be thoroughly studied. And then we must see exactly what are the gains we get. Exactly what are the losses we make. So exactly what will be the repercussions in the future after 2 years, right? And then we must have safeguard clauses, or we must have a provisional application. There are many examples of how other countries are doing it. I have mentioned a couple of countries in my presentation. If we follow these steps, Singapore agreement may be a good one, but now we have a problem. I strongly believe we have given them too much. So we can't go to an agreement with any other country because everybody will start with Singapore Plus.
There is an MBA student called Isuru who is actually working in Singapore, and he's writing and saying, we heard that the FTA will not become a reality because there are fundamental rights cases that people have put in Sri Lanka against the proposed FTA with Singapore. What is your view?
That's another thing. I don't want to touch that. This is sad because the trade is trade, the politics is politics. I'm not much happy with, connecting politics and trade together. But generally it is practiced in the world, and even EU is practicing it. EU cancel some of our facilities, that is GSP, on certain political issues. This is being debated even in WTO. Some groups are arguing against it, but it's happening. No, not only national level, even international level. This is how things have been done.
So when will Sri Lanka become a 30 billion export? Currently, we are at 16. That includes the service sector, which is 1.5 billion. What is your view, sir?
No, it's not that much connected to FTA. But if we are to do it, I think the country will have consistent policies. Today we do something, tomorrow we do anything. I think the local entrepreneurs are suffering at a rate. I have worked in many countries in the world. The investors or the industrialists or the business community are not suffering in those countries like this. They are getting a good backing from the governments to continue the businesses. Even when they are losing, even government come and defend them and then save the businesses. But Sri Lanka, I don't think it is happening. So how can we compete in the foreign markets? If an exporter is paying so much the taxes in the local market, naturally his prices will go up in the foreign market. So the India will give the lesser price. How are we going? Oh, Pakistan will give a lesser price. Bangladesh is giving a lesser price. How can we compete? We can't bring it. If we are to bring more money from the foreign the countries, we have to compete. To compete with the countries, the government has to set the policies. Government has to protect the people who are exporting. The exporters are suffering.
Very interesting question coming from Charit. He works for an IT company, and he's saying, when I look at your such an illustrious career, where you have served in different parts of the world on behalf of Sri Lanka, what made you get into this public sector? What is your advice for us to follow the same career path of yours?
Sorry, not very clear the question.
The first question is asking is that he's saying that you have had such an illustrious career in the public sector. Why did you pick up this as a career? It's a summary is asking you.
Everybody has to retire. I retired. After retiring, if the government wish to take me or not, so it's okay. It's normal.
No, his question is that you have had a fantastic career in the public sector.
Yes.
What made you select this career apart from doing anything else?
What
made you?
Rohanta, it is an accident. I was at customs and I applied. Is it okay? I think this is going to be gossip like.
No,
anyway,
please go ahead. Please go ahead.
I was at customs and for some incident I was disappointed. So I go and told my boss, look here, within 3 months I am going from there. I am leaving. I'm not going to stay here because I have no career path. And then I applied to many jobs. So then this came first. So I took it because it's a good job. I'm still an academic. I'm still studying. So that is why I wanted a career path. If I wanted money, I would have stayed in customs. So I took it. I'm still enjoying. I'm still reading.
Well, you organized almost 40 fairs in the EU. What was the secret for you to do so much of work in the EU? What was something special is a question coming from a person called Senella, who works for an IT company again.
No, because that I would put this way. The Germany is the world trade fair country. There's no country can come close with Germany when the subject of trade fairs coming in. So I was posted there and I thought this is one way that we can, in case even today, if we can promote our exports and exporters to teach industrial discipline, to teach how to compete, to teach how others are doing. The best place is best academy is trade fairs. So at that time, the ambassador was Mr. Karu Jayasuriya, a businessman himself at that time. He was from CW Mackey. So he fully endorsed it and he gave the best support. And then we managed with EDB. I must thank EDB also. They allocated some money. Before that, we were doing it by the Department of Commerce. The first the trade fairs organized by the Department of Commerce. So that success I practiced in Germany. And then I started increasing the number of fairs every time, and I show the results also. Even the organization that is GTZ, who funded some of our fairs, at my farewell, he showed the other countries and said, this is a model for developing countries. But
Nalin,
after my coming, all went for 6, sadly.
then Nalin from Qatar Airways is asking you, what is your honest advice to us who are youngsters studying for the master's program? And we are looking at driving the Sri Lankan economy. What is your advice to us who are studying for MBA program, given your experience globally?
Difficult question for me to answer because this is on the academic side, the practitioner side is something else. As an academic, I can say our people, we are not reading much and we are expecting others to teach. On the way, I think in the car, I explained, Ruth, look, I am not teaching students. I will teach students to read and understand, and I will correct how they understood. And I want each student to have his own opinion. When I give a question to a student, 20 students, I expect 20 different answers. Because I learned after retire. Every day from 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock, I read. And then I write few things to the exporters community and chambers. Maybe you may have received some. And that is what I was doing, because the reading is very, very important, but our students are very, not very good in reading, I feel, and writing and practicing. You must read, understand, and practice. Learning something is one thing. The playing with the knowledge is another thing. The playing with the knowledge is not being done. So I don't believe that we should teach students. We must help the students to study and learn. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not
No, very, very valid, PD. And
today, this is how I studied. I studied in Polonnaruwa. Oh, I must tell this to this student. I studied in Polonnaruwa. One of my teachers who taught me to A-level class did not have a degree. So this is a hard way.
Lovely talking to you, PD. I mean, yet so many questions are coming, but I'll pick up the last question.
I'll be happy to answer as much as questions, because not the teaching, but answering question is more important, I think.
Very, very interesting question. Pial from Macklem Lubricants is saying, do you believe in Sri Lanka? And if so, why?
I find difficult to understand that question also. I strongly believe in Sri Lanka. That is why I came to Sri Lanka without taking any visa. And out of the countries I have seen maybe about 50 countries I think I have visited. There's no country like Sri Lanka to develop. If we don't do anything, it will be developed.
Thank you very much, PD Fernando. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the most eminent trade and commerce experts, a person whom I have a lot of respect for. I work with him in many jobs, engage with him in so many activities. I've seen his contribution to the trade and commerce industry. So I think it's it's lovely, sir, to meet you. It's so great that you have spent some time with the students of Staffordshire University. And as you know, there will be a lot of people who are ambassadors who are also watching this show because they have been on this particular MBA Diary program for the last maybe 2 years in different other forums. So thank you very much. Ruth, over to you.
I would like to thank you, Mr. P.T. Fernando, for sharing your knowledge, your depth of knowledge, and your years of experience with us on our platform with our students today. And I would also like to take this opportunity to thank our IT team for the technical support extended. And before I close today's session, I'd like to invite our industry partners to share with us any internship opportunities or job opportunities that is currently available in your organization with us for our students. And with this said, I would like to thank all our students, our well-wishers, our industry partners, both here in Sri Lanka and abroad, for joining in with us. A good day, a good afternoon, and a good evening. Till we meet again next time, take care.